Continuando o tema Tecnologia de Rádio Digital DAB e o seu status de mercado, Patrick Hannon, VP Corporate Development da Frontier Smart Technologies e presidente do WorldDAB.
So that's the global picture. The question is, what is driving these changes? Well, very simply, the key fact is that FM spectrum is full. There's no capacity to expand, and that makes it really, really difficult to innovate. And that's the problem, because the digital giants, Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, they are invading radio space. So radio needs to be able to innovate if it's going to be able to compete effectively in the 21st century. And the core message around DAB+ is that it's essential to optimize the broadcast experience. And I stress the broadcast experience because what radio has today on FM is that it's free to air, there's no third-party gatekeeper, and it's reliable in emergencies. So these are the fundamental building blocks of radio in general, and DAB+ allows you to do that in a digital way. But then the question is, but what difference does it make? So I talked earlier on about the efficiency of DAB+. Well, this is really spelled out crystal clear. On DAB+, you get up to 6 times as many services as you do on FM. And you can see these figures from various European countries. And it obviously, it depends on each market, exactly how many services are available on FM and how many are on DAB+. But you can see there's a dramatic increase in the availability, the number of stations and the choice available to listeners. And just to say that people really value these new services. So in the UK, 17 million people, or 1/3 of all radio listeners, listen to digital-only services that they weren't able to get on FM. Now, the second key benefit is to do with sound. And this is particularly relevant where FM is overcrowded. So FM is overcrowded, you have lots of interference from the different stations. You don't get that with DAB+. DAB+ is crystal clear all the time. And then the third key benefit is the ability for radio stations to display graphics on screens. And this is particularly important in cars. So the sort of graphics we're talking about, it could be traffic information, or it could be something as simple as a station logo. The point is that you're making the radio experience much more compelling for the listener. So those are the benefits from the user's point of view. What about from the broadcaster's point of view? Well, one of the key benefits, again, comes from the efficiency angle. And the average cost of transmitting a service on DAB+ is about 80% cheaper than it is on FM. And the fundamental reason for that is because you've got so many different services on a single multiplex. It's just much, much more cost efficient. I started this section by talking about the importance of innovation. So this is, it's one thing saying, well, we can have more stations, but then you need to think about, well, what stations are going to actually have appeal to listeners? One of the best examples, it was a radio station in the UK called Absolute Radio. So this was a national service. It was moderately successful, but it wasn't one of the biggest stations. But they said, well, look, we have an opportunity to do better than we're doing on analog radio. And so they launched 6 new services. So we have 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and noughties, and classic rock. And the result is, first of all, you've got a much stronger portfolio, number one. And number two, they have tripled their audience in 7 years. So it's made a complete difference to the size of their audience. And these national services, such as the Absolute portfolio, but other stations have done very similar exercises, has really created national brands. So a lot of radio in the UK was city-based, or it's locally based. And now we're seeing the development of national brands. And that's really strengthens radio's proposition, not only with listeners, but also with advertisers. And this is a chart showing what's happened to UK radio advertising revenues between 2013 and 2018. And bear in mind, this is a time when online advertising is becoming more and more powerful. Even though online is really growing, radio in that period grew by 33%. And that's absolutely down to the fact that that radio on the digital platforms was able to innovate. So how do we ensure success? And this is a very short section, but it's really, really important. And just to take a little step back, if you go back about 20 years ago, a number of countries tried to launch DAB, as it was at that time. And they didn't really innovate. They just put the same stations on air on DAB as they had on FM. So there was no strong proposition for the listener. And the result was, it was not a great success. So the question is, how do we ensure that if we are to launch, that we actually make it a success? And what we've done is to take lessons from all those different countries across Europe and Australia and said, okay, well, what were the keys to success? And the key to success, top right-hand corner, the 5 C's. This is, if there's one thing that you remember from this presentation, it's the 5 C's. And the 5 C's are coverage, content, consumer devices, cars, and communication. So those are the 5 C's. Now, just to say, first of all, if you're going to launch DAB+, you need to have the right policy and regulatory frameworks in place. So that, that is essential. But then once you've got that, you need to make sure that your coverage, and I mentioned Australia as an example, you need to make sure that you've got enough coverage to get your services in front of the large population areas and ideally the major road networks. So that's essential, because if you don't cover enough people, you won't get enough listeners and the whole thing will not be a success. So that's number 1. Number 2 is content. And as I said, what you've got to do is to make sure that the content proposition on DAB+ is significantly stronger than what is available on FM. And that's entirely possible because there's so much more capacity on DAB+. So you can, and we saw the examples, up to 6 times as many services are available very often on DAB+ as on FM. I'm not saying you have to do that on day 1, but you do need to be launching, you need to be offering something new and unique that is going to appeal to the listener. It gives them a reason for buying a DAB+ radio. Number 3 is consumer devices. And as I said, the good news is that tens of millions of consumer radios have already been sold, and the price is much more affordable than it's ever been in the past. So that's a really strong starting point. But then you need to make sure that you're getting those devices into retail stores so that the consumers can buy them. So as broadcasters, if you are broadcasters, you need to be reaching out to those retail partners to make sure that those devices are made available to the listener. Then you've got cars. Well, very obviously, a lot of listening is done in car. And what we've seen, the good news is that in Europe, many of the, well, in fact, all of the major car manufacturers now offer DAB+ in cars. So that is already taken care of. So there's no technology bar to getting DAB+ into the car. The key thing is to persuade the manufacturers in whatever market you're in that they should put DAB+ into their vehicles. And again, that's an exercise. It doesn't happen overnight. It's an education and a persuasion exercise that the broadcasters need to be proactive. And it's probably something they're not used to doing. But what we're hearing across really around the world is that radio has got a battle to fight for its survival in cars, and DAB+ actually gives you an opportunity to be on the front foot in that conversation. And then finally, communication. So you've got to let consumers know about the opportunities, about the added value that DAB+ offers. So that's it's a long-term communication campaign is required. And as I say, consumers is part of the focus, but then you've got to work with the other stakeholders. You've got to work with the retailers. You've got to work with the car manufacturers, and believe it or not, you've got to work with your competitors because this is about the future of radio as a platform. And the people that you've been fighting against on FM, I mean, you will still fight against them when it comes to content, but together you need to build the platform. And one of the most important lessons we've learned, and which we always try and share, is the importance of collaboration right across the value chain and not only with the people that you're normally partners with, but very often the people that you're competitors with as well. But you have to do all of those things, and the key message at the top, the key to success is collaboration. Have a clear strategy, but then make sure that you're working together to achieve your goals. So to conclude, my final slide, number one, why are we here? Well, DAB+ delivers significant benefits, both for broadcasters and for listeners. And it's the fact that both sides win from DAB+. That's the number one message. Number two, the receiver market is fully developed, both for cars and in home. So that's a major step forward from the situation 5 to 10 years ago. At that stage, receivers are expensive. A lot of cars didn't have DAB. That is now changed. You've still got to get the cars to have DAB+ in whichever country you're in, but that is perfectly achievable now. And then number three, as I said, spent the last 2 or 3 minutes talking about collaboration. Collaboration across the radio ecosystem is the key to success. But if you do work together, then you can be successful and you will secure the future of radio. Thank you very much.
Obrigado. Patrick Hannon, VP Corporate Development da Frontier Smart Technologies e presidente do WorldDAB.